In astrology, you have the planets, and non-planets, I guess. But in MBTI, we have the cognitive functions. And unlike in astrology, where the planets are literal giant rocks in space that may or may not have magical space powers, cognitive functions are completely made up by some random guy in Switzerland. A cognitive function is just a fancy way to label a process your brain is doing. Carl Jung created 8 of them, and in this video, I'm going to roast all 8. By the way, I also made a video describing all 8 of the cognitive functions, so you can watch that when you're done with this video. But anyway, without further ado, let's get started. Introverted feeling. Yeah, it's backwards. Get used to that. Introverted feeling is the diva function. It's always going to put itself first. Screw other people. But it gets worse than that, because FI isn't a logical or rational function. With FI, it's all about feeling. FI takes its time to think about everything going on, and comparing it to their values and past experiences. It builds an entire rich inner world. So expect FI to spend a lot of time at a traffic light. But the worst part is that FI wants everybody else to put themselves first too. Why aren't we all meditating at traffic lights? There would be a lot less road rage that way. Basically, if FI got its way, we'd be living on Diva Planet, where every traffic light would have a meditation gong. Extroverted Intuition. This function is basically just ADHD. Think of NE as a mix of Red Bull, Monster, 5 Hour Energy, and Sunny D, injected straight into your cranium. How do you think you'd function like that? Probably not very well. NE is kind of like your crazy friend who believes every single conspiracy theory they read about online. 4chan and Reddit are their entire browser history, and they'll set up 30 birdhouses with 4K HD cameras in each one of them just so they can prove once and for all that birds aren't real. Problem is, NE kind of forgot to charge the batteries in the cameras, and subsequently also completely forgot the cameras existed. Because now, NE is searching every thrift store looking for clothes with a cornucopia. Yeah, NE can't stick with anything for long. Hobbies, romantic partners, interests, heck, they can't even keep the same birthday for more than a month. If you're wondering how NE keeps on changing its birthday, you can't let little details like that get in the way. NE hates details. Going through all of the semantics on TI for them to handle. Meanwhile, NE is going to look for patterns in its alphabet soup because they're convinced that aliens are trying to contact them through it. Introverted Sensing. This function is just kind of boring. It's kind of like the chores function. Like, it's important and all, with FI meditating and NE trying to unlock immortality by watching The Simpsons, someone's gotta keep the world going. So SI is kind of like water, which makes sense because you can bet that SI is drinking 8 glasses of water a day. SI isn't always boring though. It has its guilty pleasures. If any function is going to watch trash TV and eat chocolate ice cream, it's going to be them. Introverted Sensing is always connected to the past. I keep on telling them that their Beanie Baby collection is never going to make them a millionaire, but they don't care. SI cares more about the sentimental than the practical anyway. They didn't even upgrade from the phonograph to the record player until last week. I can't wait for them to discover the Beatles in 20 years. Extroverted Thinking. You know, I didn't know you could become addicted to Excel until I met TE. Seriously, you guys are going to make Excel the world's first ever controlled software. TE and addicts are going to have very different paraphernalia. TE is all about creating systems and setting goals. So you think TE would be pretty darn good at keeping its life put together. Except TE doesn't exactly know how to do that. So it kind of just keeps on following the corporate ladder until it falls off. The other thing I hate about TE is it's not just interested in being productive itself, it wants to make everybody else productive too. They call it delegating, but I call it being a control freak. Introverted Thinking. To TI, fun is coming up with all of the reasons Phineas and Ferb's inventions wouldn't work. TI is lovers of all things pedantic, because what's pedantic today will become problematic later. Or at least that's what they tell me. TI types out well actually so much, it's the first option on autocomplete no matter what they type. To them, everything needs to make sense and be internally consistent. If it's externally consistent, they don't care. It's all about the internal to them. Strangely enough, to TI, logic is kinda subjective, which makes sense because I've said before that TI is logic for the illogical. Introverted intuition. Okay, NI, I knew you were coming up next, because NI knows everything. After all, NI stands for know-it-all, from a Jungian point of view, of course. NI is kind of like a giant spoiler. They're like a bunch of stuck-up detectives that know what's coming up next. God has clearly given them the TV guide, but they're probably not going to tell you anything, because it's not NI's fault you're stupid. In fact, learning from your stupidity is probably the best thing NI could do for you. NI is all about function. If you've ever been to an NI's room, it's literally just going to be a phone charger, TV, mattress on the floor, and a microwave with a single spork and a bowl. Because that's really all you need. So yeah, NI is kind of boring too. Extroverted Sensing. Imagine having ADHD, but exclusively in your body. SC users are doers. They live in Home Depot. Extroverted Sensing fears nothing. Well, except FOMO. FOMO stands for fear of missing out, BT dubs. When SC needs to make a decision to do something or not, like for example, do they use a zip line made of dental floss to zip over a lava pit with fireproof alligators? Or do they not do that? Which do they fear more? Do they fear burning to death with a bunch of fireproof alligators, or FOMO? Well, it's going to be FOMO, obviously. I guess it's not that SC is super brave, it's that this function lives in the moment. Getting eaten by fireproof alligators is future SC's problem. I do really appreciate the live in the moment kind of mentality of SE. But like, you do realize that the future is gonna come sooner or later, so you better make some plans. Extroverted Feeling. I would say that FE wears its heart on its sleeves, but that would be a massive understatement. This function wears nothing but its heart, which is kind of creepy when you think about it. With this type, you're never going to be wondering what they're feeling, because FE isn't an open book. It's a megahorn. You're gonna wish you didn't know how they were feeling. But here's the thing about FE. It doesn't just feel its own emotions, it feels your emotions too. So you could say they're also wearing your heart on their sleeves. Because of this, FE ends up being overly attached to pretty much everyone. You see, all of FE's value and self-acceptance is completely dependent on how other people feel about them. FE doesn't have unpopular opinions, because FE seeks harmony. So basically, they're the sheepiest sheep to ever sheep. And that's all 8 of the cognitive functions. I've been TrebleKnight. Thank you guys so much for watching. Special thanks to my patrons, and I'll catch you guys all next time.